Let's start. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Park Strategy and Vision Committee. We'll crack straight on with the agenda. Helen, do we have any apologies, please?
I have got apologies from Doug Rathbone and Jackie Lancaster, who's on the National Park induction as we speak.
Thank you very much. Members, am I okay to sign the minutes as a true and fair reflection of the previous meeting? I'll take silence as assent. I'll sign those in a moment. Thank you very much. Usual chair's announcements. We're not expecting any fire alarms, so if fire alarm does go, please leave from the door on my left and reassemble at the assembly point at the front of the building. And a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and a digital copy of the meeting will be made available. Members, do we have any declarations of interest? None. We have no questions under Standing Order 14.2 and we have no public participation. So without further ado, let's go straight to item 1, which is Windermere Villas. This item has been to us before to approve the proposed item for public consultation. It's been to public consultation, and as a result of that has come back with some changes which are of a nature significant enough for us to see it again to re-approve it. So Rose, if you'd like to take us through those changes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so hopefully you remember back in August we approved public consultation to go out on a proposed boundary for the Windermere Villas conservation area. The feedback we received generally really positive, good support for it. There were some specific areas that people commented on the boundary, and that's what we're seeking to get approval to do some targeted reconsultation on a revised boundary. So there are areas that are proposed to be removed from the proposed boundary and then one new area to go in. So the areas to come out are areas where the feedback and on kind of researching and reinvestigating and some reflection on those areas, we conclude that they don't demonstrate the special interest that would warrant inclusion in the conservation area. So they are specifically around the car park, the caravan site, the marina village and the glebe area. And I think, yeah, we're quite comfortable that those areas would not fall into the conservation area, but they would still be part of the setting of any new conservation area. And we've also got the existing conservation area on Bowness itself, which again, they would form part of the setting of that. So they're the areas to come out. And then Belle Isle is proposed to go into the new conservation area. There was a common kind of feedback on Belle Isle not being included, and that being quite an omission because it is the kind of preeminent villa of the Lake District and the villa movement, and it demonstrates everything that we're trying to seek to conserve by having the conservation area. So yeah, a couple of areas to come out, Belle Isle to go in. So it does result in a boundary that is not a continuous boundary, but so it'll be the first for us to have a non-continuous conservation area boundary, but I think it reflects the special interest, the areas that don't demonstrate that special interest, and gives a good kind of area of continuous historic interest that we're seeking to conserve. The feedback, which is contained in the feedback report, quite really good support overall. 74% of those that responded support the creation of a new conservation area. 60% support the boundary, but that doesn't mean that 40% didn't support the boundary, because there was an awful lot of comments that said, yes, make it bigger, extend it northwards, southwards, include Belle Isle. So some good kind of strong support for the boundary, although obviously some feedback about those areas that don't demonstrate the special interest, which we have taken account of. Good support for the content of the management plan as well, with 73% agreeing with our assessment of special interest. Lots of kind of positive comments on there. You'll see some, there's quite a lot of comments, feedback on the amount of redevelopment and replacement dwellings and things, and that's come through quite strongly in that feedback. So I think it is timely that we are looking at this piece of work now. So yeah, we're seeking approval to do some targeted reconsultation on this revised boundary, specifically on any properties, business owners, residents, interested parties that are in the areas that will come out and in the area that will go in, and any respondents obviously that has to be kept informed, and the parish and town councils.
Thank you very much, Rose. So we've had a plan, done some consultation, made some revision. Any questions or comments for Rose? Jim, thank you.
Sorry to be a pain, but would it be possible to put the map on the slide on the slides, and just I'm struggling from the maps on the report to exactly understand what we've taken in and what we've taken out, particularly around the glebe. So okay, so talk us through what's in and out now on the glebe.
Speak up and invite to join the Chiefs meeting. So while trying to do that,
I'm sorting that. Okay, that's better.
is there anybody else have a question?
Otherwise you'll have to end the live stream.
Let's do that.
As Rose says, it's very encouraging that we've had the level of response to the consultation that we have. I'm certainly very supportive of including Belle Isle, which is such a significant feature in Windermere. It'll be helpful if we make any further comment on the boundary, which obviously changes there are quite a significant thing for us to consider. As Jim has suggested, actually having a look at the map will be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Rose, my question, when I was reading through the comments, there were some comments about enforcement of, and so I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that, in that having the conservation areas boundaries is really important, but do we have enough staff and resources to enforce where they haven't stuck to the conservation area guidelines or the planning conditions that are have arisen as a result of the conservation area? So I was interested that was brought up in the consultation. Thank you.
I'm one of the planning managers and development management, so sort of compliance falls under our auspices. Honestly speaking, we haven't got enough resources to deal with every breach of planning permission in a national park. I think that's, I think that's true of ourselves. It's true of every local planning authority, to be quite honest. Some breaches are technical and they're not really a bother to us. Others are problematic in that they're causing harm. We have to be pragmatic and decide what we can deal with. There's significant costs on the authority when we take enforcement action, so we tend to take the severest action on the severest cases. There wouldn't be any extra resources, as far as I'm aware, as a result of this conservation area. So I don't think it would be anything different to the current situation. If someone within that area is breaching planning control, we have to make a decision based on whether there's a breach, and B, is it in the public interest to take action? And it would be the same in future if this is adopted. What I would say is that in that assessment of whether it is in the public interest, the fact that it is causing harm to a conservation area gives added weight to the decision about whether you should take action or not. So it probably would push things up the priority list somewhat.
Okay, so we have the revised boundary on the screen. Rose, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. So the main change, well, the only changes are in this northern bit. There's no change to the southern boundary. So Belle Isle would be included, and then where we've removed areas, it is the glebe. So along the front, running towards Bowness Bay, which Bowness Bay is already included in Bowness Conservation Area, and then so the glebe area would come out, and the green spaces as well. But Rectory Farm and Cockshot Point, which are the National Trust areas, would stay in. Then just south of that, the Marina Village, see where there's the area in between the boundaries, Marina Village would come out, and that main car park and the camping and caravan club. So that's that gap there. Don't know if you can make that any bigger, Rob.
Yeah, Rose, I think that's helped greatly. Thank you. It was quite a level of detail just there. The temporary car park, the pop-up car park, is it the National Trust have down on there? Would that be impacted by this or not? Do we know?
No, the conservation area doesn't have any impact on the kind of permitted development.
So they could
uses.
still do the 28-day pop-up car park.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So no, I think that's very welcome. It aligns with what I heard from some of the businesses. And I think we should be very clear when we go back that we've listened and revised, because we definitely have, I think. And I think it's important because, Steve, we put that time in, didn't we, talking to people, and I'd like them to realise it was worth coming to see us. But no, that looks much better, I think. Thank you.
Yes, I'm very happy with what's now proposed. The only question I have, just to double check, is to ask why the areas that are coming out now, or it's proposed come out, were included in the first place. What was the reasoning behind it?
So it was the view of the consultants who did the survey and the conservation area appraisal and management plan that they did warrant inclusion in the conservation area. So that was their professional view. Maybe not having as much a kind of an awareness of the nuances of the kind of the special interest, but yeah, I guess it's professionals don't always have the same opinion, but yeah, that's what they thought. But yeah,
I mean, well, it's interesting that's their view, and I suppose we're looking at it with probably more local knowledge. So I just wanted to check, Rose, that it wasn't something that was causing officers here particular any concerns. No, it's fine.
Yeah, I believe that there's quite a few problems with the parking on the glebe. Would a conservation area help sort of rule that out or help with it in any way?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
sorry.
So, yeah, there's quite a lot of issues with parking, I believe, on the glebe, and just wondered if a conservation area would help preserve it and people parking on grass and things like that. And
the conservation area doesn't really impact on kind of the uses as such. It might, and it can help in areas where we've been able to get funding in to do enhancement schemes. So like the biggest one, the Keswick pedestrianisation, for example, quite a few years ago now, but that obviously dealt with parking issues, traffic issues, and was a major enhancement. And there's been other ones in Bowness, like Ash Street and things. So conservation area can help with that by levering in funding and improving the public realm, which can then alleviate parking challenges. But how the land is managed and in kind of in parking enforcement and things, it can't do those things as well.
It's only to do with development, basically. So if it's not development, it can't do anything. It doesn't have any wider powers beyond the Town and Country Planning Act or the Highways Act or whatever. It can't affect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So that looks like a good piece of work, a consultation that was productive and has given useful feedback, which we've responded to. So our recommendation, or officer's recommendation, is that we agree the revised proposed boundary and draft conservation area appraisal and management plan for targeted reconsultation following amendments Annex 2 and 4, and delegate any minor pre-consultation changes to these documents to the Director of Sustainable Development. So if everybody's happy with that,
Yep.
that is agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rose. Grand job. So we now move on to the next item, which is local development, upgrading of septic tanks and sewage treatment plants, which, again, to remind members, we approved this proposal for public consultation a while ago. It's been to public consultation, and similarly to the previous item, there's been some changes as a result of that consultation, which are of an age significant enough for us to re-see it and re-approve it. So without further ado, I can ask Neil to update us on what those changes are.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, as I said, we had the sort of standard mandatory period of consultation. All the responses that we received are set out or summarised in your agenda. And as a result of those suggestions or comments, we have made some amendments to the proposed order. So briefly, these are set out at 5.1 of your report. We've modified the description of development to clarify that the second part of it is to do with dwellings only. It was perhaps a little ambiguous about whether that applied to dwellings or to a wider suite of development proposals. We've omitted the requirement that it shouldn't take place in a registered battlefield because we haven't got any in the Lake District National Park, and hopefully that will remain the case. And also we've disapplied the order from locations within 20 metres of a main river because the order as set out requires you to seek planning permission if you're changing the discharge point. So if the discharge point is remaining the same, it doesn't really matter whether it's within 20 metres or not of the river. So those are the substantive changes to the descriptions of development. Probably of more interest are the additional conditions proposed, because I know members did have some concerns about the amenity aspects of a package treatment plant. And the primary one is that we've restricted the power level, the sound power level at adjacent properties to 37 decibels. Now, the reason why we chose that particular limit is that is the same limit that the government applies to air source heat pumps, which are similar. Basically, they're pushing air around, and that is the level which the government has thought, and I probably agree with them, is not likely to be sufficiently detrimental to adjoining neighbouring properties to be harmful to their amenity. Decibels are always quite difficult to describe, but I have heard that that's about the sound of a fridge, basically. It's not something which is going to be sufficient to harm someone's amenity, in my opinion. The second change was that we've limited the height of any above ground equipment to 1 metre in height. For the majority of these package treatment plants, it's really just there's a manhole cover, basically, but occasionally there will be a small kiosk or a control area which may be above ground, and we thought it'd be sensible to restrict the height of that as well to minimise any landscape impacts. And thirdly, at the request of United Utilities, if it's within 10 metres of a public water main, then you should seek permission as well, unless you've already got the approval from the operators of that water main. For the most part, that's United Utilities in this part of the world. There will be occasionally some independent ones, but they're less well registered. So, subject to those changes, the recommendation is that the National Park Authority adopt the order, and that will allow people to replace their septic tanks with package treatment plants subject to the conditions, again, set out in your Annex 1.
Thank you very much, Neil. Happy to take questions. Jim.
Thank you, Neil. Just a quick. Well, first of all, thank you for the conditions, and particularly the sound one seems very sensible and consistent. So thanks for that. It's always been a bit of a topic of mine. Will we be able to track the volume, given that we're no longer getting applications to change tanks? Will we know how many tanks are being upgraded across our park?
I think there's a requirement for them to notify us when it's been done. Yes, so yeah, within 42 days of completion of the development, the developer or landowner shall notify the local planning authority. So yes, we will be able to.
Excellent. And I'd ask that we do keep a record of that so that we can keep a tally of our progress.
Yeah, I think that is important. We'll have some feedback as well in certain areas of the national park where we've commissioned people to replace tanks as well. So we'll get that information as well. But yes, I think it is important, both for we know how successful otherwise it's been, but also if we know how many have actually taken place and we're not getting complaints about those things, we know that it's working well. And if we are getting complaints, we know we might have to adjust it or modify it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you. If I understood it rightly, there's all sorts of septic tank work which are currently already covered by permitted development if they're on the land that comes in the garden of the house, that kind of stuff. My slight concern is, I guess, I just wondered how that works out, is are we making, you know, some of these conditions are only going to apply therefore to the new permitted development. What about all the tanks that are being done under the other one? And are we creating an unlevel playing field? And different but related, some of these conditions, clearly, if somebody had applied for planning, we would have imposed on them, quite likely, like the above ground, possibly the sound. But others probably we wouldn't have done before, like the United Utilities and the mains. So I just wonder whether we're making it in some ways slightly more onerous for a small proportion of tanks, while possibly the majority is still carrying on as before. And, you know, I just wondered how that works as a big picture.
Okay, yeah, there's a number of different questions there. I'm not entirely sure that you can actually put a new package treatment plant in your garden without requiring planning permission. There's different views on that, but I'm not sure that's the case. Assuming that you can, you would still have those permitted development rights. Those are granted by the government, general permitted development rights, so you can exercise them. So that would basically, this can't take away those rights that you already have. So it wouldn't make it any more onerous in those circumstances. I think this whole exercise has made us look quite closely at what impacts package treatment plants can have. And we probably haven't routinely, for example, put a noise condition on them when we've dealt with planning applications. Really, you should be doing it on a case-by-case basis, I think. So it is possible there are some slightly, I wouldn't say more onerous, because it doesn't take away, you can still do the work, you just need to make an application. And what this does, it flags up those developments which may be problematic. It doesn't mean that they will be problematic, it just means that they may be. If we have an application, we can consult United Utilities, for example. They will tell us if it's within 10 metres of their water main, and if it's a problem, they'll tell us and we can make a recommendation accordingly. Again, it may not prevent them from doing it, it just means they might have to take care and not to put the diggers in very close to the might be a construction method statement, for example, for carrying out the work. So I don't think it's going to make it more onerous for people to do this work. I mean, the whole point of it, as you know, is to try and make it less onerous. I think the costs of submitting an application, of putting the plans together, would far outweigh any minor inconvenience about checking about what the distance to a water main is, and to make sure you're putting a tank in which is not going to cause nuisance to your neighbours. I also understand from the manufacturers that if there is a problem with the tank in terms of noise, there are various acoustic methods that you can take which would reduce the impact on your neighbours as well. So they're not concerned that this would reduce their ability to install tanks.
Thank you very much. And Neil, so I think we've seen this before. It's been to consultation, some minor changes. So if there's no other questions or comments, we're being asked to Is everybody okay? Yeah, good. We're being asked to adopt the local development order upgrading septic tanks and sewage treatment plants as set out in Annex 1 with the revised changes. Everybody happy with that? Very good. Duly adopted. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to the next item, which is the local plan, which we're going to work from Chloe. Or just swap seats. So just to remind members, this is a annual reporting which we legally are obliged to do. So we will see this every year with updated figures and numbers. And over to you, Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. So these papers present the annual monitoring report, which covers the period between April 2024 and March 2025. These reports are the fourth appraisal of the local plan, so they begin to establish trends to help us monitor whether the policies are effective, which is really useful, particularly as we start thinking about the local plan review. Following member feedback last year, the annual monitoring report includes additional information about the future housing trajectory, the remaining amount of housing to be delivered over the plan period to meet the overall target, and the past delivery of housing approvals and completions. Also included in section 7 under additional monitoring requests are some key considerations and emerging local plan issues that have been identified through previous annual monitoring reports, feedback from Development Control Committee and our development management officers. I think that's it. But I'll pick out a couple of key facts and figures. So 91% of planning applications received were approved. 89% of these were approved under delegated powers. 60 homes were built against an annual target of 80 homes, and 83 new homes were approved, including 3 affordable homes. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chloe. I've just got further, Tiffany.
I was interested to read the key points, and thank you very much for pulling those out, because it is quite a substantive report to read through. It seems that 83 new homes were approved, including 3 affordable homes, which slightly surprised me, actually. I thought the proportion of affordable homes would have been higher. But I don't know why I think that. I just thought, I rather assumed, because we're so busy trying to encourage affordable homes, local occupancy, because we want to benefit, obviously, locals as far as we reasonably can without too much social engineering. So I don't know if you had any comments, or if Stephen had any comments on that.
Yeah, I'll say that. Sorry, the previous year before, there were a few more affordable houses granted permission. We saw a few of our site allocations come forward, so there was a greater proportion of affordable dwellings on those. And we are working quite hard with our communities at the moment to identify exception sites to bring forward as 100% affordable housing. So we are working hard to address that issue.
I'll make him in as well, Chair. In that, it's worrying, to be honest, and concerning. And I think that is probably one area that we need to look at as part of the local plan review. I don't necessarily know what the answers are, but certainly that is of concern. And Chloe is right, you know, we are trialing a proactive approach, which Chloe is leading with development management, going to certain communities to try and help them work through this affordable homes challenge. But it is one of concern.
I've got one direct follow-up and 2 other questions. So I was slightly troubled by that as well, and particularly it looked to me like I think I couldn't quite hear at the beginning, sorry Tiffany, that the proportion, that disproportionately fewer homes that are affordable were getting built as opposed to permitted than with others. That's your point. And what I thought would be useful would be a table, because actually I also thought for all homes, the drop-off was quite steep between permission and them actually getting built. What I think would be useful would be to understand the time lag between permission and building, which is presumably on average a year or 18 months or something. There must be some data on that. And then having a table showing the data not in years. So at the moment, we know how many homes get permitted in 24 and how many get built in 24. But the ones that get built in 24 were, of course, permitted in 22 or something. So that we can see directly how the proportions of the homes being built linked to the proportion of the homes being permitted, and see if that tells us anything. And I was sort of trying to do that in my mind, and there was a significant drop off, and a particular drop off on the affordable homes. I think it's more common and a reinforcement of this. I'm a bit worried about it as well, and it'd be worth sort of looking at it for the next local plan. My other two comments were, I wondered whether, we have a great success rate on planning appeals. I wonder if we're a bit too successful on planning appeals. Oddly, the reason I say that is because the reason, that implies that we don't take some of the borderline decisions that could go either way, and that we're playing it really safe. And that has some downsides, because there may be some properties where we think, well, actually, maybe it's 60-40 or, 70-30 or 55-45, but actually, maybe we shouldn't allow this. And then if we lose the appeal, we lose the appeal. Too bad. It's a judgment call, as others here from PSV, but I just wondered whether that is sort of an unmitigated positive. I'll just pause on that. I have one other small comment.
Just from a DCC perspective, I don't feel the vast majority of our appeals relate to this sort of subject. They're primarily overdevelopment of a single property by a person.
Right.
The estates, I can't even think of an estate that we've turned down actually, or has gone through appeal in recent times. It's primarily, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's primarily the overdevelopment of individual properties which tends to result in appeals. I think where we, without being prejudiced in any way, I think DCC is very supportive of enabling housing development where it's sensible within the park. The issue is we're not getting the applications coming through is where I feel they may stop before DCC, that's the only thing, but my feeling is it's not something we would change by changing our risk criteria.
It's like the other way around us. We're permitting too much and therefore we're not losing.
It's a fascinating question you asked, Sabina, and I will certainly reflect on it. I honestly don't believe we're permitting too much, but I do take your point. The concern that I would have, just to put a marker down, I guess, is that, of course, we are measured on our performance in relation to appeals. So certainly I do not want us to be changing our stance whereby we then get identified by government as being too risky. Yeah, it is, but one has to appreciate every time we refuse an application, we do have to give consideration to the legitimacy of that refusal, because I don't want to necessarily be going into appeals where I'm thinking I'm probably going to lose this one, because so there's the performance figures, there's the costs aspect of being awarded costs against us, which can happen, and that is something that I need to mitigate. So I guess those might underline, I guess, your notion that we might be taking a cautionary approach to appeals, but I don't honestly believe that is the case with members. There are certainly instances where I know we've recommended approval and members certainly take a different view, and that is the democratic nature of the development control process. So I do take your point, and I will reflect because it's an interesting one, and what I'll do is probably try and look at previous trends just to see where we're at. on that, because that might also give me a different indication. So, but please don't become reckless in your decision taking. That's all I ask.
Sabina, thank you. Can we just go to Sally and then come back to you if that's okay? Sally, did you have microphone, please, Sally?
I had a couple of points that came up during the debates just going on, and then I'll go back to my question. Rural, the exceptions that you mentioned, do you mean rural exemption sites, rural exception sites? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Right, I'm interested to find out more about that. I came up at a meeting I was at last night actually, and the MP's researcher was saying she wanted to know more. So could I put them on to yourself? But I need to know more as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We can have a
Okay.
conversation about that. Yeah.
And just on this point that's just been made about the appeals, it'd be useful to look at Trensley, because I'm wondering if there's any link to the quality or the availability of pre-application support. So that is leading to that as well. So those were the things that came up during the discussions. My comment on this, Clevie, is on page 33 and page 36. Just find where it is. It's to do with the objective, which is in the vibrant communities, about increasing the length of stay. And in the report, the target is measured by the increase in number of bed spaces, but that's not related to increasing length of stay. So is that the wrong measure for that objective? And is that objective something that the local plan can actually affect, or is that a marketing and behavioural change thing that needs to be delivered through Lake District National Park and other partners? So what we want to be looking for, we're looking for an increase in length of stay from, let's say, 2.4 nights to 3 nights in order to reduce journeys, visitor churn and improve business sustainability. But that's not what you're measuring there, isn't related to that. So maybe it's one for the next local plan, but it's not quite right in this document.
Yeah, I think what that objective is also trying to achieve is having a range of different types of accommodation on offer, so that anyone who wanted to would be able to come and afford to stay in one type of accommodation, and therefore increasing their length of stay from becoming, say, a day visitor to an overnight visitor. Would appreciate that's perhaps not reflected in
It's not a
bed
direct
spaces
relation
quite so
to it.
much. Yes. So yeah, we can pick that up in the next local plan review.
26. No, it was just that isn't quite a good fit in the monitoring report. Thanks.
I just had a quick one, which was we've consistently not been seeing the employment site allocations taken up. Have you got any more insight as to why that is? Are they in the wrong place? Are they the wrong type? But I mean, because when you look at, for example, the Throughout Our Business site, they one of the arguments for approving that was that there was a consistent over demand for that site. So have we just got the wrong type of thing in the wrong places, or do you know anything more about that?
Yes, I would say it's a little bit of that. If you're closer to the main roads, the employment spaces, there's more interest in them. The size of them as well. A few of our sites are quite small. We know that Greengarth on the west of Cumbria is quite popular. It's available, it's on the market. There's been a lot of interest in that. So it's also possible that other sites are just not available at the moment and are therefore not coming forward.
Yeah, I think this is something that's quite interesting, and definitely we need to look at in the next local plan. Is the point that Peter's just touched on, the economic opportunity that we are creating across the park is interlinked with inherent affordability of properties. If you think about we've talked about this in previous meetings about the working age population that are actually able to relocate here. Somebody might move to the Lake District to, for instance, work for the authority and actually have quite a well-paid remuneration, but of course, that person is likely to be bringing with them a partner who also needs economic opportunity. So I think we need to really look at these situations where why are permissions not being developed, whether it's housing or specifically employment or commercial. The other issue I think we've really got is affordability in terms of the affordability quotients or restrictions, which again can be looked at in the next local plan, are obviously typically associated with larger developments. And, you know, we need to look at sort of how we can encourage pocket developments, gap developments that also encourage, you know, some proportion of affordability. That's sort of 3 out of 83 houses. Obviously, it's not great. If it was an 83 unit development all on one site, then obviously that number would be much higher. We actually have issues outside the national park where developers, landowners are proposing large schemes, and of course they have a certain proportion of affordable housing, different models of ownership. And there was just somebody commenting yesterday that there was a large application that's just hoved into view in Kirby, in fairness, just outside the park, next to an existing 48 home development that did have quite a reasonable proportion of affordable housing. And people are commenting on this potential next application, some of whom are owners on that new development, and said that actually the kind of the truly affordable outright ownership ones all went very quickly. The shared ownership schemes are still, so there is still some availability, but they're not particularly attractive. So we need to look at all these different things in the round. I know it's really difficult because when we're looking at Windermere Gateway as a development on that scale is the one that naturally attracts the most objections, because it's, you know, oh, it's too big, it's not in keeping. But if we're trying to develop a mixed use and affordable, truly affordable scheme, then that's the sort of thing we need to do more of. But I think definitely looking at the commercial sites in conjunction with the housing developments, or certainly the outline stuff that we're looking to develop as part of the new local plan, then we need to sort of think about what is that prospectus that we're making, because it is a big issue for hospitality, but ultimately hospitality isn't the sort of industry still, unfortunately, that pays well enough or is secure in its tenure for people to actually get mortgages and for housing to be affordable. So we need to look at that. And again, access to transport then becomes the issue, is why, well, Western Lakes or anywhere that's kind of easily accessible by rail and or major road, wherever those sites may be, are obviously more popular than the smaller gap sites, although we need those as well, obviously. So thanks.
Right, and I have one final part, excuse me, which we went on last year, and Chloe will remember this. This is the table of second homes and holiday homes. Now, I see you've tidied it up a bit by taking out previous years, so it's a bit harder to tell whether some of these numbers look really dodgy, as they did last year. I guess my question to you is, are you any more confident about these as well last year? And if you're not, I think it should be properly caveated in the body of the paper. This is in the public domain. It's the best data we've got, but we've known that it doesn't meet certain plausibility tests. Therefore, we should say that it would be best practice to say very explicitly that data falls short of a number of plausibility tests, and we'll need to look at how we gather that data for the next local plan.
Yeah, just coming back on that one. I've got a lot more confidence in the figures that are in this paper in comparison to last year. It's not necessarily the second homes and holiday lets figures that I had an issue with. It was the total dwelling stock figures from each parish, which skews the percentage when you work it out as a percentage, hence why there's no percentages in there. But if you do compare the second homes and holiday let figures to 2024 and 2025, they're pretty similar. There's not too much change, which gives me a bit more confidence that they're probably not far away from what the accurate picture really is.
Thank you very much, everybody. So that's a good update on the local plan annual monitoring report. We are just asked to note the report, so that is duly Duly noted. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of part 1 and part 2. So we go into away hour now. Would members like to have a quick break now or perhaps in half an hour? Let's press on. Let's press on. If everybody's happy for that. Just wait for a couple of moments to ask Helen to turn everything off, but we can welcome a rank of officers at the back. Do you guys all want to come up?